Hey guys, welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andrew Seegers, and today we're joined by Derek Bittner to discuss the alarming news of Nintendo slashing its annual sales forecast for both the Wii U and 3DS. So let's get started. Alright Derek, well we don't normally do this, because we tend to stick to more, game-focused discussions, but this is huge news for Nintendo that this came out with, basically admitting that they completely misread the market for this past year. So they came out with news last night, for us, it was during the day in Japan, that, they're basically slashing their annual forecast by a huge amount. Originally, they had expected to make a 55 billion yen profit for this year through March of 2014, but they're now expecting to actually take a 25 billion yen loss, which is pretty significant. Nintendo historically hasn't taken losses, only I think a couple of times in the past year or two that have they. Their over 100-year history. So the fact that they're having yet another loss is a big deal. But more importantly is the reason for that loss. And it seems like the Wii U is not doing anywhere close to what Nintendo expected it to do. They had initially expected sales for March of 2013 through March of 2014 to be about 9 million units worldwide, and they're dropping that down to 2.8 million units. So they're selling less than a third of what they expected to sell. And on top of that, they're even reducing the forecast for the 3DS, which they originally intended to sell 18 million of, down to now 13.5 million. Now, to be fair, that's still a good number. That's 3DS, according to NPD, was a top-selling system in December. For the US at least. So that's still doing okay. But the fact that that's not selling super great as well, or as great as Nintendo expected rather, is kind of concerning. Okay, so that's the raw numbers out of the way. What are your thoughts on this of Nintendo? More so I guess the Wii U specifically, and it just not selling anywhere close to Nintendo's expectations.
Well, it's not exactly surprising. We've all kind of felt the winds and had a feeling that things just weren't going as well. The best indicator that things weren't going that great is that I believe in Japan, Super Mario 3D World didn't really even had trouble cracking the top 10 in its first week.
Right.
And that's worrying. That's Mario is big. It's hard to tell how big Mario is in Japan compared to the US. I honestly don't know those numbers, but Mario is still Mario. It's iconic, and the fact that this game was not able to push those systems over the winter is kind of worrying. Obviously, it had an effect. Now, I believe we still heard that December of 2013 was still the best month for Wii U sales, so there is hope. It's just that Nintendo hasn't been able to capitalize on this, and I think they realize that. That's why it's getting lowered for all these expectations. Mm-hmm. And it's just unfortunate that this is happening, but I think, this isn't the end of the world. I don't believe this isn't the death knells for Nintendo.
Yeah.
Nintendo's not going anywhere. They just need to sort of take a step back, look at what's happened, why this happened, reshuffle their resources, figure out what they need to do, and go forward from there. As long as they can do that, Nintendo will be just fine.
And, it seems like that is what Nintendo is doing, because Iwata has come out with a few statements since, to clarify, because they need to appease their shareholders, of course, so he's going out there trying to smooth the waters, or trying to calm the waters. So first of all, he's been adamant that he's not stepping down, at this point at least. He is going to stick in there with Nintendo, and what's more interesting, though, is what he said recently, and that is that they're basically looking to, he basically acknowledged that what they're doing now isn't working, and they're actually looking at what they can do to make it work. He said recently that, we cannot continue a business without winning. We must take a skeptical approach whether we can still simply make game players, offer them in the same way as in the past for 20,000 yen or 30,000 yen, and sell titles for a couple of thousand yen each. So what he's saying is, that translates to about $200 to $300, for game consoles here. So yeah, he's questioning their entire business model at this point. And he also mentioned that they are looking to smart devices to see how they can leverage them to, for, as a business. Although he did say that it's not as simple as simply enabling Mario to move on a smartphone. But so this is kind of big for Nintendo. Like they've hinted at things before, looking at the smartphone market, but they've always been adamant that they are about their hardware, very much about their own hardware. But I'm wondering if this kind of marks a change in direction for them, if they might be looking, I mean, I'm curious to see what this means. What exactly does this mean? How are they going to leverage smartphones and tablets, to complement their business?
It's hard to. I mean, I don't know sales. I'm not,
Right.
any person that's related to market research at all. I sort of just keep my nose out of this sort of thing because I just care more about the games. I care about what's coming out, and you're the same way. But I don't know exactly how they'll adapt it to. I mean, I've heard about them putting out like a whole Pokédex thing on the iPhone type.
Right.
I forget exactly what came of that. I didn't really look into it too much. But, I mean, there's stuff they can do with that. There's the whole second screen experience that the Xbox One and the PS4 has, or maybe just the Xbox One. I don't have a next-gen system, so I'm not quite sure how that all works yet. It's just, there's things they can do with the whole smartphone aspect of things without actually making games for them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just having more integration with that sort of thing. And I think what it all comes down to is they just need to find out what they need. They need to find their niche again. They sort of lost their niche, and I think that it all stems back, of course, to the Wii, is that they built up an audience that wasn't sustainable.
Right. I mean that is the main thing. They were riding on the coattails of their previous. Well, yeah, there's multiple problems there. For one, Nintendo just let the Wii die. They just straight up let it die for like the last year or two of its life.
Mm-hmm.
It exhausted, basically exhausted, all their momentum that they had going with the system. They expected to just carry over the momentum that they had, with the Wii U. Which, as you mentioned, was addressing a market that basically no longer existed. The Wii was big, but it was cheap. It offered a, new type of gameplay experience, and, Wii Sports was just a brilliant game to tie into all that. Like, you saw the Wii, you saw that look like fun, and it was something you hadn't experienced before. The Wii U had none of that going in, and, yeah, the whole thing was just kind of misguided. So, I mean, I guess it's hard to figure out like where exactly the problem is with Nintendo, because going off Iwata's comments, it sounds like they're looking, they might be looking at a drastic, redirection for their company, whereas, maybe they don't need that. If you ignore the Wii U, it makes me wonder if they really need that, because 3DS is still doing okay. It makes me wonder specifically how much they just messed up with the Wii U, as opposed to it being a core issue with having a console and focusing on consoles and handhelds. Because the Wii U's been kind of a disaster. It had no games for its first year aside from its launch titles, basically. Then they finally started coming out with like Pikmin 3, a Wind Waker remake, and then Mario.
Yeah.
Now for me, like, so I'd be curious to get your thoughts, because you just picked up a Wii U not too long ago.
Yeah.
For me, like, when I first got the Wii U, I don't think I ever said this in a discussion or anything, but it was the least excited I'd been about a Nintendo console that I can ever remember. Like, I remember having it here, even weeks before it released, and I'm like, yep, that's the Wii U. It's like, it didn't feel like revolutionary to me or next gen ish at all. Not that I even prescribe to next gen being based purely on technical merits. It's just there was nothing exciting about the Wii U when I got it, and even this past year of software, like I liked Pikmin 3 was okay. I was a little bit let down by it, but it was an okay game. I really liked the Wind Waker remake, but it was a remake, and then Mario, I actually quite liked it, but nothing really excited me about those games. So like I wonder how much of it is Nintendo, is just how they've handled the Wii U. Like for me, they haven't made anything like that's made me super excited. We've got a bunch of sequels. some remakes. Just nothing that's like really hooked me. What do you think about that?
I think you sort of hit the nail on the head when you talked about the whole Wii into Wii U transition, how Wii was pretty much dead, and then Nintendo was hoping to pick that back up with the Wii U, basically starting it from a dead start. And if we look at the other systems that just came out, the PS4 and Xbox One, they're selling quite well. And let's be honest, they don't have the greatest launch lineups either.
Right.
You constantly hear about I don't hear about much on the Xbox One. There's a few games here and there, like Dead Rising 3 or Forza or whatever. And PS4, you got Resogun and Killzone and that type of stuff. But beyond that, there's not really much there. Mm-hmm. The difference I see, and it's the one you brought up, is that they had the momentum.
Right.
The 360 and the PS3 were still doing very well.
Yeah.
PS3 had an amazing year this year. Xbox 360 still carrying on. People respect it because they had that momentum. The sales continued. People saw, oh, this is the next system. Mm-hmm. So people picked up the next system, even though there might not be as much to game on there, but they were willing to continue on. The Wii, there was two things happened, is that people didn't realize that this was the next system. People thought it was an expansion of just Wii. That's why they have marketing now saying, hey, this actually is a new system, not just a add-on for the Wii.
Right.
And there's that no momentum. I think Nintendo could have potentially carried itself to that point. But because of the lack of third-party support, as always, unfortunately, and the big Nintendo titles being so far apart, it's like they weren't ready for this generation at all.
Yeah, and I mean, the sad thing is, it's kind of how Nintendo's always been, at least in the last few console generations. Like, they always just let the last console just kind of die. Nintendo 64 had Conquer in its, like, I think that was the last game they had, first party, or maybe the last game ever, I can't remember exactly, but there was, like, Conker's Bad Fur Day, which, by itself didn't do much, but it was addressing a very specific market. And I think that was like the only game they had for that year until the GameCube launched. Then the GameCube, same thing. They let that die until the Wii came out. And then of course the Wii is completely botched as well before the Wii U. Now now if you ignore the Wii, every system Nintendo has sold less of. NES to Super NES sold less. SNES still did super well, but it sold less than NES. 64 sold less, GameCube sold less, and now the Wii U is on pace or on track to sell less than even the GameCube. The Wii was the Wii was a bit of an exception. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Nintendo's success. They did a fantastic job with the Wii, but again, that's because they addressed a market that was fresh, but not one that was sustainable. Because of how it's been eroded by smartphones and a variety of other factors. Mm-hmm. So yeah, basically Nintendo has been. It seems like they haven't learned their lesson. There was an Emily Rogers article not too long ago where she pulled all these quotes from Iwata over the years, saying how they won't repeat the mistakes of the last generation. And he said that like every generation, where he's like, oh yeah, well, we always we with the last generation we launched a console, with no, we had like a huge drought, and we learned our lesson, we're not going to do that again. And he said that for like every console generation, like with the GameCube, the Wii, the 3DS, the Wii U now, and it's like, when are you going to learn, man? It's weird to see Nintendo's repeating these mistakes, and they're finally catching up with them. The lack of third-party support, the lack of a regular schedule, and it's really just hitting them hard now with the Wii U. Mm-hmm. It's concerning.
It's concerning, but I don't think it's hopeless. I don't think it's hopeless at all, because let's look at the first year of the 3DS.
Right.
They put out the system. There were very few games for it. It seemed like a dud. Let's be honest. People were calling the death knells once again of Nintendo and saying how the 3DS is, it's a failure compared to the DS. It's never going to live up. And Nintendo turned it around. They cheapened their system. They started bringing out game after game after game, and there's a lot of good third-party games out there for that now too. And the 3DS is something special. There's a lot of great games. I mean, you just have to look at the sales of Kirby Triple Deluxe in Japan this past week, and you can see that Nintendo is not going anywhere. Mm-hmm. This is a sustainable system. It's just that they're having a little rough spot as they're trying to get their footing in this new age that they really weren't prepared to go in. They expected to go their way, the way that they had sort of forged thanks to the success of the Wii. And they needed some way to continue that, so they kept the gimmicks of the Wii for the Wii U, as well as the second screen that worked so well for the 3DS. And unfortunately, that did not translate into the success they imagined, because I believe a lot of gamers expect a very solid online community. I don't play games online that much. I'm not much of an online gamer, but I'm not the majority. There is a lot of other people who do. That's the big draw, and Nintendo is woefully handicapped for that. Mm-hmm. I think they've increased it a little bit. God, I hope so for the release of Smash, because that's one game I do want to play online a lot. But I think it's all because Nintendo wasn't prepared for them for the trajectory of the console generation to go in the way it did. Mm-hmm. With the DS and 3DS, they were able to continue that legacy after a few adjustments to see what people wanted, go in that direction, and make it work. Because the Vita and the PSP never put up that much of a challenge, so they were able to correct it a lot easier and figure out what they needed to do. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not a big smartphone person. Those games just don't interest me. I like a bit more, even in a portable game, I like a bit more of an involved experience.
No, I totally agree. Yep.
Yeah, so I'll always be a supporter of Nintendo's portable systems. They just do the right thing. So that's just a long-winded way of saying Nintendo can totally bring themselves out of this and make a bit of a success. They just need to know what they want to do, go for that goal, and make it their own thing, but also sort of follow the trends that everybody else is going with. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and I think what they could do for it is resurrect some of their old franchises. They've been relying so much on Zelda, on Mario, on all this stuff.
I feel like that's part of the problem. I mean, franchise fatigue, I feel like we've seen so much Mario recently, and even Zelda, that used to be an event series, when they announced new Zelda, it's like, holy crap, this is a big game. I have not felt that way in the longest time about that series. It's almost like an annual thing now at this point. I mean, I don't think it quite is, but, it's like every couple years, and it's like, okay, there's another Zelda game. They're good, but, I don't get excited for them anymore, and that's, it's the same way I feel about Mario now. It's like 3D World I enjoyed it, but it was a very good game, but it didn't get me excited like Mario 64 or the Mario Galaxy games did. Nintendo's just starting to pump these things out, and it's kind of weakening them in the process, I feel like. But now getting back to what you were saying, so you think Nintendo can possibly reverse the Wii U?
Yeah, I totally believe that. I mean, it's not a bad system. I enjoy my Wii U.
It's not, but I do think it's a flawed system.
Yeah.
I don't think it's completely hopeless, but I think it's the closest Nintendo's ever been for a console to be hopeless. Mm-hmm. Because you're right, they did reverse it with a 3DS, but I think the situation's a bit different for the Wii U. For one, the 3DS had almost no competition. I mean, the only competition they had is Sony, and even that's pretty limited. Sony's had limited inroads in the handheld market. The PSP did okay, and the Vita's doing less than that. Nintendo's pretty much always had the handheld market to themselves, whereas now they're competing against Microsoft and Sony, both of which have been quite successful in the console market. And I feel like there are other factors working against Nintendo, such as the fact that they have this $300 system out there that they can't readily reduce the price of as quickly as they did with a 3DS, it seems. Mm-hmm. And the HD development apparently caught them off guard. That's what delayed a lot of their games. and it takes them so long to make these games. I don't know how quickly they can even reverse that trend. I mean, the only games we know about coming up really are Mario Kart, Smash Brothers, X, and Hyrule Warriors, and what else do they have?
We got DK next month, and we got Bayonetta 2, and that's about all we know of as far as exclusive Nintendo Wii U games.
Or really almost just Wii U games in general.
Yeah, because that's the other problem, is that there's a lot of multi-console releases coming out on both the Xbox One and the Wii U, and the PS4, and these games are also coming to the PS3 and 360, so there's a bit of crossover there. But even despite the fact that the Wii U is just as powerful as the PS3 and 360, nobody's putting their games in the Wii U.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. No one is. I mean,
the only one I can think of off the top of my head that's coming out on the Wii U as well as the 360 and PS3 is Watch Dogs.
Right.
And if I'm going to get that game, honestly, I'm going to get it for... It seems made for the...
Next gen.
Yeah, next gen.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, Wii U's part of the next gen, but the step up that the PS4 and Xbox One provides. So, it's...
I mean, I think part of the problem is the Wii U has only sold less than 4 million units to date. 3.91 million Wii U's in more than a year, which is pathetic. That is pathetic. If you extrapolate that to... let's say a 4-year life cycle. That's 16 million units at most. That is less than the GameCube. And that's with first year. That's with launch sales in there, which is something, Nintendo's not going to have again, obviously. So I think the problem is, I'm guessing a lot of developer. I'm sure there's even research into this. I'm guessing a huge part of that market already owns an Xbox 360 or PS3. So it's like, why even bother making a Wii U version when people, who own a Wii U probably already own another system that can pick up, a third-party game on? It makes no sense to address the Wii U as a console if that's the case.
Yeah, and that's we saw evidence of this with Rayman Legends. I mean, Rayman Legends decided they had a wide open field where they could come out with the game. They would be the only game on the market. There's not much competition, and it's on the Wii U exclusively. Right. They decided to delay it 6 months or so. I forget exactly how long the delay was, but basically from March until September, and release it a week before Grand Theft Auto 5, so it could be on multi-console release, thinking they'd get better sales that way.
Right.
That's either stupid or ballsy, or just a sign of how little faith third parties have in the Wii U.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a sign of how little faith third parties have in the Wii U. So my question is, what do you think Nintendo can do to reverse this? Because I feel like the Wii U, I mean, like I mentioned, I feel like it's kind of screwed currently. I mean, I feel like the only chance they have is to basically relaunch that system. I say this as a fan. I'm obviously not a business person, so everything I'm saying right now could be completely wrong. But I really do feel like they just basically have to relaunch that with a cheaper SKU, maybe even get rid of the gamepad, or sell it as an accessory, because almost none of the games require the gamepad. I mean, it would be a mess. I mean, because they have to go back, patch games that do use it, for like menus or whatever to not use it. I mean, I guess I don't know what they can do. I feel like their best course of action would be to relaunch it without the gamepad. Ensure future games don't require the gamepad, and then you patch the big ones that have already come out that do require it. Such as I'm trying to think, like
Pikmin.
Like Pikmin, exactly. They could pretty easily modify that one so it doesn't require it at all. And I feel like that's something they could do, because they made. I mean, that's part of the problem with the Wii U is they made such poor use of the gamepad. There was no reason to buy it for the gamepad, except for the only compelling reason they've offered, which is a reason I don't care about, but some people do, is off-screen play. But it's dumb to make everyone pay for that when not everyone's going to use it. So it makes sense to sell it as an accessory, to appeal to people who might take advantage of it, and just drop the base price of the Wii U down however much they can. Like, if they can drop the price. I mean, I have no idea what the gamepad costs them, but if they can drop it by like $50 to $100 by getting rid of it, I think it's an option that they should definitely explore. I mean, I think what they need to do is position the Wii U as a cheap alternative to the Xbox and PS4. And I don't know how they can do that by having the gamepad in there, which is something it seems that no one wants by virtue of these terrible sales.
There's a problem with the way that you... it's not a bad idea what you have, but I don't think it would work, personally. Because I don't think coming out with a new system this soon would change their fortune.
Well, I'm not saying a new system. I'm saying, relaunch...
Or a relaunch Wii U, okay. Same thing. And the problem with lowering the price is that they need to lower... Of course they need to lower the price. I think that would help a lot. But they can't lower it too much because there's this odd thought process that I've read about, that if a system's too cheap...
Right, people will perceive
you think it's poorly made.
Right.
And therefore not worth the money. But you don't want it too expensive because it's out of their reach. So you got to find that sweet spot, which I always felt $300 was at that point. Now, $250 I think could still work for them. $200 I think that's going... I know this is odd to say, too cheap, especially for its second year. I think $250 might be the sweet spot.
Well, that's been the sweet spot for that's been the price of every Nintendo launch console up to the Wii U. Every other console launched at $250. Yeah,
and I don't know if the off-screen play has been I've seen a lot of people praise it. I mean, not all the games use it, but I think more for me with the Wii U gamepad is maybe you don't have to get rid of it. I don't know how that whole thing works, but definitely lessen the gimmicks with the gamepad. Just keep it simple, keep it there for off-screen play if you need it, and that's all. Maybe you don't have to relaunch the system for that. I mean, it's hard to say, but I think simplicity is their friend. As if they can make some way to find this a simplistic way to make games that people really want to play, and that's always been the thing. It's you make a game that everybody really wants to play. And I mean, as great as 3D World was, it looks the same as 3D Land. People have a 3DS. People aren't gonna necessarily upgrade that quickly. That's the problem there. The same thing with the whole new Super Mario Brothers U thing. None of the games that they put out this year have made it seem worth the upgrade. And if they can finally show a game that does that, I think they'll do it. And I mean, who knows? Smash Brothers is always going to sell a lot, but I don't know if it'll sell that much more this time because of its whole situation. Because Smash Brothers doesn't sell as much as Mario Kart or Mario Galaxy, I believe. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think that's the numbers. So I can't even say Smash Brothers is going to be their saving grace. They need... I feel like they need something new, original, and strikes that chord with that all gamers can have.
Yeah, well, I mean, that gets back to what I was saying earlier with, nothing on the Wii U has been super exciting. We haven't seen... we haven't had a Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time. We haven't had... a new type of gameplay experience, which Nintendo promised with the Wii U gamepad, and that's why I feel like they should just get rid of it, because it seems like even I don't know if they're unwilling or just can't figure out how to make use of the gamepad, but they haven't used it, and it seems so dumb to me to have it included with the system just for off-screen play and the occasional Miiverse message. I feel like they either need to go all in with this or offering reasons to have the gamepad, or get rid of it entirely and sell a system that doesn't need it. Because I almost feel like, they, this is kind of a crazy idea, but what if they sold a Wii U that has no gamepad, has no Blu-ray drive, is completely online only? You download every game, and that way they solve the problem of having, games that made use of the gamepad. You only offer games that, have been designed to not have a gamepad available on this online store, and that way, that would reduce the price of the Wii U, I think, by a good amount, because you're getting rid of the Blu-ray player in it, or the disc player, and they'd have to offset that with increased memory. But I'm just throwing out ideas. I feel like whatever they can do, they almost have it's almost like they have to almost rebrand it. I mean, not going that far perhaps, but they have to just they have to just reinvigorate the whole idea with the system. Like, they have to get people thinking about the system in a new way. And I don't know how they're going to accomplish that short of a relaunch, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not as simple as the 3DS's problem, because the big thing they were selling the 3DS for is, hey, it has 3D now. They lessened the importance of the 3D and focused on the games, like I said they should, and should with the Wii U, and the sales increased. As you said, it's not as easy to do with the Wii U. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's impossible to say what they should do.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we're not business people. We're not marketers.
God, no.
I mean, yeah. I mean, we're just talking out of our ass.
Exactly. We're just simple gamers. I love Nintendo. I've always, been a fan of Nintendo since the NES. They have a great lineup. My whole thing is just use that lineup. Find a game that people are interested in playing, because I believe Kid Icarus Uprising did pretty damn well. Yeah, sales-wise.
I think, I don't think it did bad, so...
And that was a game that hadn't had a new game... That was a series that hadn't had a new game in 20 years.
Right.
Or so. And it did that well. Now, of course, it's going off the success of Smash Brothers, but we haven't... there's a lot of series out there that Nintendo hasn't really put much focus on.
Well, yeah, I mean, they've kind of let a lot of them just die a slow death. I mean, F-Zero, Star Fox... You could argue Metroid, even though they tried with other RAM. I mean, that's to a lesser extent, but yeah. I mean, they have this rich history of IP that they've kind of, I feel like they've mismanaged a bit. They focus too much on their core franchises, and that's starting to erode their potential as well. Mm-hmm. So, because as I mentioned, I just don't get excited anymore for hearing about Mario and Zelda, which are my favorite franchises. And, it's like, yep, now there's another one.
Yeah, so you don't see people crying over the reveal of Skyward Sword or Link Between Worlds.
Right, yeah. I mean, I was there when they announced Twilight Princess, and that was insane. When they showed off the first trailer for that game. And you don't get anything close to that anymore, especially with... of course, it doesn't help that Nintendo didn't have a live E3 press conference anymore.
Yeah.
But, I will say, I mean, this whole conversation, by its subject matter has been kind of negative. But I do want to say one thing, and that's I'm kind of actually a little bit excited by Iwata's comments about them looking at what to do differently. Like, I feel, because, even though I want Nintendo to do well, but I haven't been in love with their games for the past few years. Like, I mean, I haven't had that feeling that I have with their past consoles. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking forward to seeing, if these changes maybe reverse that. Maybe they'll start being exciting again, which would be awesome. But conversely, by the same token, maybe it'll end up even worse for them, from a gamer perspective. Maybe they'll start making, silly smartphone games. I have no idea, but
well, I think Nintendo in a corner has proven to be really they've come out with some of their best stuff when Nintendo's in a corner.
Right.
There's been a lot of great game concepts they've come up with, a lot of great games. Let's look at the Nintendo 64. I mean, people thought, it just wasn't doing as good as, what Sony was doing. And of course, it didn't sell as well as the Sony did. I don't believe. I don't know those numbers off the top of my head again. Once again, I'm not a numbers guy. I'm a games guy.
Yeah.
But Nintendo put out some of the most iconic games on the N64, and that was not considered as good. They were considered in a corner in those days. They didn't have the breadth of games that other systems had. And those are some of the most iconic games of all time. Star Fox 64, Mario 64, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. They didn't even have some of their other franchises. There was no Metroid game during that whole time.
Right.
And you brought back, and then look what happened when they brought back Metroid for the GameCube. They were once again in a corner. They decided to take a chance. Put out the Metroid Prime, sold amazingly well. We got a new trilogy out of it, doing really well. I think they could do that with their other franchises.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to see it. Get some there's potential there. I think they could do all kinds of new and interesting stuff, even like going as basic as ice climbers.
Yeah,
I think they could come out with a pretty rework that whole game. They could make a pretty interesting climbing game out of that.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, what they could leverage basically the popularity, enabled by Smash Brothers, like they did with Kid Icarus, to bring to bring classic franchises back to the forefront. You're right. I'm sure Nintendo could come up with something interesting for Ice Climbers, in so many ways too. Whether it's a simple side-scrolling game or even more in-depth 3D game. Who knows? There's limitless potential, and that's just really what it's about at this point. Nintendo needs to start making things that excite the market again, and it's been a while since we've had something like that. Mario 3D World was a really good game. It just wasn't an exciting one, and yeah, I feel like that's where the problem is. Nintendo needs to be exciting again, and I think that. That will help. Be exciting, release things on a regular schedule, don't kill momentum. That's really what it comes down to.
I think if they have at least one pretty decent game a month, they'll be in pretty decent shape. And it doesn't have to be all from the same franchise. We don't need to have, Mario Kart, Mario Tennis, Mario Golf.
God, right?
New Super Mario Brothers, and then here's Zelda.
Yeah.
Do like Pilot Wings, Wave Race, Metroid, Donkey Kong, screw it, Kid Icarus, Ice Climber, something, Star Fox, F-Zero. There's so many franchises these guys have. I know because I've seen the trophies for them in Smash Brothers.
Yeah, right.
These guys exist.
Bring back Stone Race FX, damn it.
Yeah, there is so many classic games out there that they could do.
Yeah.
Even just do the unthinkable and decide to give Camelot, or somebody else that has more 3D experience. The Earthbound franchise, make a new Earthbound game. I know those are cult classics, but that's a cult classic that people get excited about.
Right.
And a new game in the franchise for the Wii U. And think about the graphical style they could do for that. They could make it interesting. They don't have to be top of the line. They could almost make them toy-like you sort of see in their various advertisements and stuff like that. There is incredible potential here, and I think that's what's frustrating, is that gamers see the potential that the Nintendo has, and Nintendo is solely focused on about three to five of their franchises.
Yeah, I mean that's it, and and the more they do that, the more they're gonna just fatigue those franchises. I'm curious to see what happens when Mario Kart and Smash Brothers come out, because I am looking forward to both. But even I have to say, even Smash Brothers, I'm don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to it. I'll probably end up loving it, but at this point, I'm not super stoked for it like I was with Brawl. It kind of still feels like more of the same. To be fair, I don't know how much of that is just me, maybe. But and also to be fair, it's not like they've ran that series into the ground like they have some of their other ones. That one's a purely once per generation thing.
Yeah.
But I still kind of feel similar about that too. They haven't shown anything off super new about that game either. It kind of looks more like an updated Brawl. So I don't know. I mean, we haven't played it, of course. I am I'm looking forward to it, obviously.
Of course.
But I probably will end up loving that game. But I mean, that's just kind of the point. Nintendo, they just need to learn how to, or just start making things exciting. And
that's the thing, is that we know Smash Brothers out. We know what to expect from it. We want something exciting. That's why people freaked out when Mega Man was announced, because new and exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's part of the problem. It's almost like there's too much. It's almost like there's too much riding on Smash Brothers now. If we had something new to look forward to, and Smash Brothers and Mario Kart's complements to that would be awesome. But now basically the entire future is basically riding on those two games.
Well, look how excited we got when we saw that the Rosalina reveal trailer, and we saw Kirby racing alongside the Mario Kart.
Right.
We thought, holy crap, Super Smash Kart or something like that.
Yeah, right. And then we're oh, it's Smash Brothers. That's still cool, but it's not.
It's awesome, but it's
Yep. No, I'm there with you, man. I mean, I don't want to come down I feel like I'm being more negative, in this conversation than I really feel, but but I mean that also is kind of the case. Like this is this is a troubling time for Nintendo. I'm hoping they work through it, and I'm hoping they work through it in ways that just reinvigorate the classic feelings we used to have whenever Nintendo will announce a new game. So I'm just very curious to see how they ride through this and see what happens this time next year. I mean, it's going to take some time to see the results of their change in direction. Nintendo's a big company. It's a big ship. It takes a while to turn those things around. So it's going to be a while before we see the results of the discussions that they're having today. But I'm very curious to see what those results are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I don't want to be negative about this at all. I don't think Nintendo's going anywhere. I'm not one of those people thinking, oh god, they lost so much profits, they're in trouble, doom for Nintendo. No, Nintendo's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
If something happened, I mean, let's look at Sega. It took Sega a long time to finally drop out of the console race. They had several, basically ever since the Genesis, they were just kind of going downhill. I mean, the Dreamcast was a wonderful system that had a nice turnaround, but it wasn't quite enough.
Right.
And we're not there at that point yet with Nintendo. Nintendo, yeah, they're taking a loss now, but they make a ton of money. I'd be surprised if they didn't have some money stuck around.
Oh yeah, well no, they have.
Wii days.
Yeah, they have. Well, yeah, they have what's famously known as like a war chest. Like they have billions of dollars stocked away. So I mean, they can stick out.
Exactly.
They can ride this out for a while, But of course, they are a publicly traded company. So the question is like, how long will shareholders put up with this for, before they demand change? And
which is why they're doing the change now.
Exactly.
So,
right.
Yeah.
It's just it is a little concerning that it took them this long to realize this. Like, who didn't see the writing on the wall for the Wii U over the last year? And it's only been up until now that Nintendo's revising their forecast. Just 2 months before before their ambitious 9 million units goal for the Wii U.
Yeah. No, this is all conjecture on my part, but I have a feeling Nintendo of America probably realized a lot of this stuff is going on, but I think Nintendo of Japan might have been a little too stubborn.
Yeah, I mean,
realizing a lot of this stuff, because Nintendo of America, they can only do so much. They can't make any big changes.
Right.
That's all controlled by the Japanese offices. That's not going to change. So I think you get the sense that there's enough pull in that company. They realize what they should do. They just have to go along with what they're given, then try to market it and do with it as best they can.
Yeah, I mean that could be. I mean, who knows? Who knows how that communication or... We
have no idea how the
exactly.
whole internal politics of Nintendo goes. But I think that might be a bit of a factor because, Reggie Fils-Aimé and Bill Trent and all these other guys, they're not stupid. They can get on any sort of social media site or any kind of the gaming site and see the trends. They're not going to not realize what's happening, but they can only communicate so much. Right. So...
I mean, yeah, and... Maybe part of it too is maybe they were caught off guard by how low December sales numbers might have been. Because December is historically the biggest month for Nintendo, and that was still the case this past December.
Yeah, and I think they were maybe overestimating a bit how well 3D World would do. And I think this and Nintendo seeing the Japanese sales for 3D World, because I don't even know the American sales for 3D World at all. But I think this is sort of a wake-up call, which I think is what they needed. So, no, this isn't all doom and gloom. I think they got a wake-up call. Let's see what they do from here.
Yeah, I mean, that's
and I'm hopeful for the future.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually am excited. Like, I am curious to see what they do to turn it around. I'm optimistic, and I'm excited to see what they do. And that's good. That's what Nintendo needs. They need people to be excited about what they're going to do.
E3 this year is going to be key for them.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder if it's going to if they're
going to pull what they did last year.
Well, I'm just wondering if that's enough time for them to actually change anything, or if it might not be until next E3 that we actually start to see.
I don't know if it's enough for them to change anything, but my hope is that they might announce more than they were originally going to. Because Nintendo is historically a company that keeps a lot of things close to their vest.
Yeah.
And I think it might be a good idea for them to push these games out and get hyped. Hype is a good thing. Get people excited for these games. Let them know about it.
Yep, that's definitely the case. They need all the hype they can get. All right, well, I think that wraps it up for our Nintendo financial discussion. A little bit different than what we normally do, but I think it went pretty well. Thanks, guys, for watching. And if you like this discussion, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, where you'll find all kinds of things that we post, throughout the week. And make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain.com for our epic amount of Donkey Kong coverage coming up next week. We got to play the game for 4 hours, and we'll have a lot to say about that. Starting Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So stay tuned for that. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and bye.